In this nugget, I'd like to discuss and demonstrate with you how we can streamline the creation and binding of our virtual servers to services, and those services being bound to servers. Let's begin. Whenever I talk with people about how the bindings occur inside of the NetScaler, for example, our virtual server is bound to a service, the service is bound to a server object, what pops into my mind is that song, Dem Bones. The toe bone's connected to the foot bone's connected to the heel bone, and so forth all the way up the body. Well, in our nuggets up to this point, we've created those objects independently, and then we linked them or bound them together. And we did them separately and strategically because I want to make sure you knew exactly what those objects and entities are and their relationship with each other. However, once you're comfortable with those elements, we don't have to manually go through and create one, then go create the other, then create the third one and bind them together. We can actually do it in a much more streamlined manner. And here's the secret. If we start with a brand new virtual server, where we give it a name, the protocol, the port, and the IP address, from there, we can specify what services we want to bind to it. And if those services don't exist, we can click on plus, add the services, bind them, and as part of that adding and binding process, we can also identify these server objects. So what I thought would be fun for you and I to do is we'll go into our NetScaler, we'll remove all of our server objects, service objects, and virtual servers, and the cool part is we can create the whole thing again in just a couple of minutes. So here on the NetScaler, let's go to Traffic Management, we'll go to Load Balancing, and let's remove our virtual servers. Now they're gone, let's get rid of the services. They've served us very well, but they're also very easy to recreate. So now they're gone, and we'll also get rid of our server objects as well. Goodbye, thank you, goodbye, thank you, and goodbye, and thank you. So we have no to repeat it for the two additional services that we want to create and bind to this virtual server. So we'll click on Add Binding, then we'll click on the plus symbol right here. We'll call this Service 2, 192.168.1.252, and on the back end we're using HTTP and port 80. We'll click OK, click on Done, and then click on Bind, and then click on Add Binding for our third service. So we'll click on the plus symbol to click on Bind. So now we have these three services which are now bound to our virtual server. We'll click on Close, and we'll click on OK. And now we're looking at the properties of that virtual server. And from here, we also want to associate the wildcard digital certificate with this virtual server. So over here on the right, we'll simply click on SSL certificate. We'll click here where it says there's no server certificate currently. From the drop-down list, we'll go ahead and select wildcard for Acme. Click OK. Click on Bind, and click on Done. Now currently here it says down doobie doo down down. We can fix that with a refresh. I always have this little cross my fingers when I click on refresh, because if we configured everything correctly, the services should be up, and as a result, the virtual server who's using those services to load balance against should also be up. Then of course we'd want to save our configuration, so we'll save our config, click on yes, and also here at the virtual server, let's go ahead and modify this for the method. Instead of saying least connections, let's go ahead and specify round robin for the load balancing method. So we'll double click on the virtual server, we'll click on the plus symbol to bring the method over to the left hand side, and we'll specify round robin. And that really just helps for the lab to help verify that we are really doing the load balancing based on the method specified. So we'll click on OK, click on Done, and then once again we'll go ahead and save this configuration. And let's go out to Bob's computer and let's test this. So at Bob's computer, we'll go ahead and launch Chrome, which is launching into incognito mode. There's green, fantastic. Colors.acme.com is resolving to 23.1.2.4. That's the virtual IP address we just configured on our virtual server. So there's green. Let's launch it again. There's red, and I'm expecting blue to be the third one up, only because red and green had already come up. And that looks great. In this nugget, we've demonstrated a more streamlined approach to creating a virtual server, binding it to a service, which is then bound to a server. I'm glad that you joined me for this nugget. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.